Well, guys, the World Series is set, and I got to tell you, it is a star-studded World Series. The Yankees against the Dodgers, and I guess if you said, well, what is baseball all about, and what's the World Series all about, you'd probably pick these two franchises, and it is Aaron Judge against Shohei Ohtani, but there are a lot of other supporting actors as well. So Niren and I are going to get into this today. What would the Cubs lineup have to be able to beat these teams in next year's World Series? All that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. So let's go. Like and subscribe, thumbs up, and let's talk a little Cubs baseball. All right, Niren Desai, I'm Mick Gillispie. Great to have all you guys hanging out with us. And Niren, you and I kind of talk about this a lot in the comments section. And then now it's like, hey, let's bring you on and let's get into this. Cubs lineup to me it's got a lot of background singers, but we don't have a lot of headliners. And we're finding out this year that to be in this mix, you got to have headliners.
Exactly. We need a lineup that strikes some fear. And if you look at these lineups from the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Yanks, you gotta go through murderer's row if you want to get through it. And we don't have that. And I think that's where the gap is, and that's what we need to fix for 2025, as at least Jed does, or whichever front office is going to be there after the World Series.
We kind of get into this, and I want to go through the lineup here in a second, but I've speculated that Jed's future to me, and this isn't anything that anybody's told me, it's just my gut feeling. I think it's in jeopardy. Tom Ricketts isn't giving him an extension. He's to reports made that clear, at least right now. And when you're putting a roster together like this, so many decisions that you make are going to affect the franchise far beyond next year. And so to me, it's like, look, it's being a lame duck front office when you're making those type of decisions is definitely dangerous. And from any business standpoint, it's hard to have a leader that you are saying, well, we don't really know what's going to happen after next year. And it's a kind of a weird situation to be in. You make a lot of these moves after the World Series. So I'm not saying I know anything, but I'm just saying just from a been around the block a few times standpoint, before we get into that, I just have to say that I don't know if it's going to be Jed Hoyer. I'm not willing to say 100% yes, but also I'm not saying no. And I'm not pulling for him to get fired either.
I like Jed. I think he's a smart guy. I think he knows what a good team should look like because it's sitting there in plain sight out in the market. I just don't know if he's been allowed to go that route, or they have a different strategy. And that's why they have these organizational meetings postseason. What's the strategy for 2025? Because 83 wins is not going to cut it. They got a big gap, as Craig Counsell has said, with the Brewers, and they got to close that gap because, as Cub fans, we're suffering and we're paying a lot of money to see this product.
I saw Tom after the World Series, and he was like, he was tired. I don't remember his exact quote, but, he was tired of the lovable losers tag. And he's been a Cubs fan for a long time too, believe it or not, just knowing him. So I'm sure there's a part of him that is going, what do I have to do to get back to where we were? And really in 2015, but the formula to get there, you could see it was really clear and laid out when Theo took over to get to that point, 2015, and then all of a sudden, winning in 2016 and contending after that. I don't feel like we've really contended. I know that we've been a team that's had a better record than 500. And getting back to the whole point of this is that lineup construction and what's the lineup going to look like? And I don't feel like the way that things are now, there's a ton of flexibility where you got these prospects in Iowa and then the guys that you have signed at the major league level.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. 2 years ago, our farm system was depleted. We are rebuilding, and now we're crowded. We have a crowded lineup where we don't know where to bat everybody, or if we're good, where does everyone play? And we have prospects ready to come up, and we don't have spots for them to play either in the field or in the lineup because we know the MLB has changed, right? The days of a top prospect coming up and batting second or third are rare. They need time to develop. There's an adjustment from AAA to the major league level. And we saw it this year with PCA. He had to really adjust his whole setup and his timing to be able to hit major league pitching and major league velocity. So we have to assume that's going to happen, right? So that's the big issue. And how does this lineup shake out given it's kind of crowded? And I think that's the thing we should debate on, who's going to bat second, third, fourth, for us to be good, not to be competitive, not to be fun, to win.
Yeah. Well, let's look at this. I mean, we got Pete Crow Armstrong, who you would figure would be a prototypical leadoff guy or a ninth hitter. The one thing that I worry about is he doesn't walk enough, but he's so fast, and he's got. I really think he's got the potential to be an excellent hitter at the major league level, because he's got a good eye and he's also got really quick hands. It took an entire season for him to kind of get his feet under him, where I can remember talking, this at the beginning of his, like 2 years ago, and I'm going, hey, this guy can really play. But it was obvious that he was overwhelmed by the game, right? But center field defense, I think he's the best in baseball. And I guess he's the guy that you would think would lead off for this team.
I think that's the goal. I'm sure they're talking right now that hopefully he can develop into a leadoff hitter. But but I think that will change, right? That'll be a process. Maybe he bats seventh first. No, I think out of the 9 hole, just because of getting more at bats in a game. You want him like seventh or sixth, and as he proves himself, that he's going to move up and up, and hopefully he's the number 1 or number 2. I kind of see him like as a Corbin Carroll, much faster, a little bit different player, but like in terms of defense, playing center field. But hopefully that's where his trajectory is, going into like a number 1 or number 2 hole, because with his speed, he's just going to create havoc. And also he's a left-handed bat, and we know that's an edge, right? Having a left-handed bat, most of these pitchers are right-handed in the league, and you want as many left-handed difference-making bats up at the top.
Well, but if you don't have him there, then all of a sudden you look at this lineup and you're like, who's leading off? I mean, is it Nico, coming back from surgery? I'm sure that's going to hurt his trade value. And we've kind of talked about this. He's a guy that you would hope you could get some value for, obviously, before we found out he had surgery. And you have other guys that can play second base, like a Matt Shaw, who gets on with walks and also has power, not as good defensively. Or James Triantos doesn't walk, but gets a ton of hits. Really great contact batter in an age where you don't have a lot of contact guys anymore. But I mean, if say Nico sticks, I mean, is Nico the guy that you put at leadoff, or I mean, who else does it if it's not PCA?
Yeah, I mean, last year we had Hab batting leadoff towards the end of the season, and he did a good job. But he's a run producer, so that's the debate we have. They're going to have internally. Like, would we rather have him batting fifth, driving in runs, or do we want him leading off because he does take walks and he can put a point on the board with a homer or a double, or an extra base hit? I think that's debatable. Where's he best suited? I think he's best suited in the 5 hole, personally, if we're good. But he could bet leadoff initially as well. I always thought Seiya could be a good leadoff hitter. Just the leadoff spot's different than he used to be. He takes pitches. He's good with fastballs. Start off a game, but I don't know if he would do well batting first. I think the pressure might not be great for him. I think he's better lower in the order as well. So I think that's a debate on who should bat first. But right now, I think it's going to be Hap or Nico. And I worry with Nico's injury that maybe he's going to end up in the 9 hole, and you're going to see PCA probably batting 7th with like Swanson and 8th. That's kind of where I see the lineup right now. If we're good, right? Like, because we have better hitters in the 2, 3, 4 hole, if we're good, in terms of, what the moves are going to be over this offseason.
Right. And that's kind of where you get past that, the leadoff guy, who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4 is Bellinger. I guess we'll assume that Bellinger's going to opt in, although he may opt out. You heard the talk that he didn't do well at Wrigley. It seemed to me like he's just starting to trend kind of back down to earth a little bit. He had the year where he was fighting for a contract and had a lot to prove, and he was healthy too, right? The comeback player of the year season. And then last year had some injuries, but I don't look at him as a difference maker. I think he's a really good player, probably the best player on the team. but not so much ahead of everybody else. It's not like you got Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, guys that are going to scare you every time they come around. He's a player that you got to worry about, but he's not, to me, not scary. So let's assume that he opts back in. Where do you go out and get the flexibility? Where's the flexibility to bring in somebody that can make a difference in this lineup? Because you start going down and you're like, okay, well, maybe Hap second and then Belly third. And then, Paredes fourth. I mean, is that kind of where you're looking right now? And then, and this is a lineup that got shut out 15 times last season.
I mean, I think that's the big issue for this summer or this off season, right? How are they going to find, some kind of an edge or some kind of fear that they can inject into this offense in the 2-3 spot? Hopefully Vlad Guerrero is on the table. Now, there's a couple other guys that are out there too that might be available as well. Maybe we can go for a power hitting catcher that we can bat in the middle of the lineup. Who knows, right? Who's available? Who are they willing to trade? Mm-hmm. And you have guys like Shaw, Ballesteros, and Casey that are kind of ready. I don't know if they'll be ready in April, but they'll be ready at some point, and we can't bury those guys as well. So, the whole development aspect feeds into even the next year, like we were talking about with Jed's decisions for 2025 feed into 2026 as well. So I think that's the big question. I don't know. It's funny how if you throw in a couple of feared bats at 2-3, Bellinger, Hap, Paredes, they look a lot scarier.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because those stressful pitches, yeah, you might get through them. You might get through those bats. They might make outs, but then you got how much you got left in the tank for Belly or Hap or Paredes, and then they put up a crooked number, right? And that's the key, right? You want to lengthen these lineups. You want to create more stressful innings, and you want guys that can carry the load when your best players aren't their best players, because that the other 100 games, when they are your best players, they're carrying the load. And you can have blowouts, you can score early and often, and then makes it easier for the bullpen. A guy like Tyone might be better with a lead. And there's a trickle-down effect to all of these things. And I think that's the main issue for this offseason. How can they inject two guys that strike some fear into this lineup? Or are there other ways, to skin a cat more or less in terms of creating a good to great team for 2025?
Yeah. And look, we'll have to do another show just on the pitching, because there's a lot more flexibility with the pitching part of the roster than the position player part of the roster, unless the Cubs go out and make some trades, right? And they've got to decide, and you and I were talking about this off the air, whether it's going to be we're trading prospects, which are all bunched up at AAA for some reason. Some guys probably didn't need to be there as soon as they were, but they got them all there now. Or it's, guys off of the major league roster. And to me, just my assessment, Moises Ballesteros, love the bat, the defense. You guys aren't going to love it. He's still learning. I mean, he's got to come a long way to be someone you put behind the plate and go, hey, I mean, this guy can really do it, like on a day in and day out basis, but he's got a great bat. Shaw really proved a lot over the course of time. And the thing that stands out to me the most about him is that when he struggled, and really part of the struggle was just getting used to playing so many games in so many days and being hurt and doing it, and banged up the way that you have to in baseball. The walk was always a weapon for him. He's going to take pitches. He's got a big league guy. Those guys go to the major leagues and have success because they're going to get on base. They're not going to get themselves out. So I'm figuring that he's a guy that you got to figure out. He's got to be on the roster to me this year, right? And he's a first-round pick.
It's a good question, Mick, though, for you. You saw him play every day. He's got that really unique setup where he kind of like jumps at the ball with his bat. Don't you think there'll be an adjustment period in pro ball where they're gonna throw him tight, they're gonna throw him different velo, up and down, change his eye level. I mean, how much was he taking advantage of minor league pitching that he could do more damage against? That's the thing with Shaw. Like, how do you break him in?
Well, I mean, all these guys, you got to put them up there and let them fail. This could be a whole nother show too, but there's a big difference now in the minor leagues because the strategy is we're just going to push guys up and they don't really care about, like they used to, having the skill set to be successful in the big leagues. It's like you almost want to just check a box that you've been there and then move on. Okay, well, he was there. He had a week that was good. He had a month that was good. Let's push him up. And then you get to the big leagues and you look like Pete Crow Armstrong, Hollywood Pete. Didn't look like he was much Hollywood for an entire year. I'd seen that, but I also had seen a lot of things that he was doing wrong at the major league level, at the minor league level. And so he had to go to the big leagues and basically make a lot of mistakes and learn from those. And he's a player I love watching, and he's figured it out, but he's still going to make more mistakes because he didn't play as many games in the minors, and there's not the same emphasis that it used to be 15 years ago, where they're really pushing you to learn the skills that it takes to be successful. But like kind of going back to this lineup and the position player construction, you make a great point with catcher, because it's the one spot where there's a lot of flexibility. But I mean, but is there free agent catchers that are out there? Would they be willing to go back and get Wilson Contreras, who I said from the beginning, I don't know why you're getting rid of this guy. And I know he had some issues defensively, but when you look on paper, there's not a lot of guys that can hit at that position. He broke iPads. Okay. Well, guess what? I'll take some broken iPads over getting any kind of production out of that position. But do you go out and make a deal and get a, Shea Langoliers? You talked about him, someone that you could put in the middle of the lineup, someone that like is a old school Carlton Fisk type guy at the position. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there even that many catchers out there that you could even put in the lineup that would be available that could turn things around like that?
Well, that's the issue, right? There's not that many two-way catchers, right? We know that the front office values a D-first catcher. The problem is that our lineup is crowded at the bottom, right? So we need someone that can bat fifth, sixth, and can be an impact bat and be a good catcher. And there's just so few of them. Is it Shea Langoliers? I know Casey Kelly or Carson Kelly is available, as a free agent. I mean, he's not that great. It depends what they think about Ballesteros as either part-time catcher or Amaya as a part-time catcher. Like, I think Amaya is like solid backup, but he's not going to block. We can't block, an upgrade because of Miguel Amaya's out of options. That'd be crazy. So that's the thing about this whole lineup construction and this roster construction that we're stuck with, right? In terms of where guys are stuck, where guys are slotted in terms of, where they're best at, right? So I think that's the big thing. Here's the thing, Mick. If we're going to be good next year, I want to see impact bats 1 through 3, right? I want to see Vlad Jr. and obviously a dream would be Soto and Vlad, right? But I'm not even going to go that far, right? I want to see Vlad Jr. second, and I want to see either a Brett Rooker or a Santander, or maybe a veteran that is holding the spot for a Casey or a Mo Baller later in the year. I'm okay with that too, but I don't want to see, we're just going to run it back. That'd be crazy, because we've already seen this twice. We can't run it back, and I want to see Bellinger maybe if he is opting in, or if Suzuki's untradeable. I want to see them not in 2-3 spots because we have better players. That's the key. We have to strike some fear into the opposition. I'm hoping Shaw's a leadoff hitter, at some point as well, because think about it. If you could throw, a 320 bat or a 315 bat with doubles power, right in the top of the lineup to strike, to get a point on the board early, I think that's the way the Cubs have to create an edge against the Brewers and the rest of their division, and against the better teams in the NL.
Right. Well, where do you put Shaw? So if you get Vlad Jr., which I love Vlad Sr., but if you get Vlad Jr., I mean, is you giving up on Michael Bush? I know
it's a sticky situation for the front office, right? Now there's different paths they can take. They could go young. They could commit to the prospects and the guys they like currently on the roster, and guys that are immovable in terms of their contracts, and also they want to be there. They want to be in Chicago. There's other paths, right, in creating an edge on this roster through depth, through the pitching staff, and through the bullpen. So that's the thing. We have to channel where they can create an edge, because if they have right now, I don't think the Cubs as an organization right now have an edge. I think they're good at certain things. They obviously have a great fan base and a great in-game experience. But where's the edge? That's the thing that what Theo created 10 years ago or 8 years ago. he gave us an edge, right? He gave us an edge with young bats that were going to be together for a long time, and that was going to be our edge in MLB. Right now, we lost that, and that's the thing that Jed's got to fix, or Tom's got to fix if he doesn't think Jed's the guy. That we got to create some kind of an edge on this roster and in the organization that we can develop, draft, and scout, or a roster construction that people are chasing us. We're not chasing them.
Yeah. Look, I'll end this with my thoughts on Theo. Right, Theo, when he came in, great, perfect guy for the job. After the World Series, it felt like we just kept getting further and further away from the things that made a Cubs championship team. And what I'll tell you about Theo was I've never seen anyone go after elite talent better than him. And that's the edge you're talking about, because if you have better players at every position than the other teams that you're playing, you can get that slight edge. Cubs don't have that anymore. They have slightly better than average players at every position, but not better than. I mean, how many times have you gone into a game this year and looked around the diamond and said the Cubs win every single position or close to it, right? It's like, it's a 50-50 split. But then when you play these teams that are in the World Series right now, you lose a lot more than you win just based on position players. Well, that guy's okay. That guy's okay. Whatever. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is he was just always shooting at the goal, right? Like, hey, we're going to make the playoffs, get some experience. We'll see what happens. We catch a break, and winning in the playoffs, winning a World Series, you got to have breaks, man. Baez has to hit that home run against the Giants in the 9th inning when you need one. Like, he just has to get into it. It goes through the wind and it barely gets in the basket. On certain days, it's not getting there, the ball has to bounce your way. But we're not doing either one of those two things right now. We're not winning with elite talent, and we're not getting the breaks because we're not in the game to get the breaks. We missed the playoffs. So hopefully as things move forward, whoever runs the organization, whether it's Jed or somebody else, they get back to those principles. Niren, it was awesome talking. Let's get back together again and get into some pitching and some other stuff. You do great with charts and graphs. What I love those too. So, man, if you got time, I'd love to kind of make this a regular thing.
Hey, I'm glad to be on. I'm glad to contribute. There's a bunch of Cub fans out there that just love nerding out about roster construction and lineups and how to fix this team. So, hey, I'm game if you're game.
Yep, I certainly am. This is the time of year to do it too, because it's like the dead period, right?
I always tell people I've been the Cubs GM for about 30 years. I just don't get paid.
All right, Niren, great to hang out with you. And you guys like and subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for hanging with us on the Cubs baseball channel. Get in the comments section. You think I don't read you? I do. And Niren will tell you that. So go Cubs.